The GPS sputtered its last breath 20 miles from any semblance of human presence. Its blank screen a stark confession of my isolation as I eased my rusted Corolla onto the shoulder of a dirt road that seemed to writhe with a life of its own. The device had clung to life an hour ago, its signal fading somewhere between the interstate's humming lanes and this boundless stretch of cholla and creosote, where Arizona's red earth clashed with a blue sky that stretched to a horizon so distant it felt like the edge of existence. The road itself pulsed beneath my tires, its ruts and curves etched with the ghosts of travelers past, each turn pulling me deeper into its embrace, a siren song of dust and stone that drowned out the world I'd left behind. The landscape was a study in desolation. Jagged saguaro cacti stood like sentinels against the horizon, their arms raised in silent warning, while the faint shimmer of heat waves distorted the air, blurring the line between reality and mirage. My hands tightened on the wheel, the leather grip worn smooth by years of neglect, as the house emerged from a shallow valley, its adobe walls the color of dried blood, weathered by decades under a merciless sun that had cracked its surface into a network of fissures resembling a living, breathing hide. Solar panels glinted atop the roof like the scales of some prehistoric creature, their reflective surfaces catching the dying light, while a weathered windmill turned lazily, its rusted blades creaking a mournful dirge against the desert breeze, a sound that carried an undertone of ancient sorrow. It was precisely as the Craigslist ad had promised. Remote caretaker position, 1 week, cash payment, must follow all instructions. The words had been a lifeline when I'd seen them, a glimmer of hope amid the relentless calls from debt collectors in Tucson, their voices a chorus of threats that had driven me to this forsaken corner of the world. I needed that cash desperately. In my wallet, a creased photograph of Maria, my younger sister, stared back at me, her wrist adorned with a silver bracelet bearing a tiny horse charm that glinted faintly in the dim light of the car's interior. I'd carried it since she vanished 15 years ago, at the tender age of 7, lost to this very desert during a bike ride that ended in silence and empty searches. The debt collectors had made their demands clear. Foreclosure loomed, my credit was a ruin, and this job offered a chance to claw back some semblance of stability. I parked beside a rusted pickup truck, its hood dented as if struck by an unseen force, its tires flat and crumbling, a silent sentinel that mirrored my own vehicle's decay. Grabbing my duffel bag from the back seat, I stepped into the silence. Not the gentle quiet of an empty place, but a heavy, oppressive stillness that pressed against my chest like a physical weight, urging me to whisper lest I disturb something ancient and watchful. Even the wind, usually a howling companion in the desert, seemed muted here, its gusts subdued as if the land itself held its breath, its vastness observing my every move. The front door swung open at my touch, unlocked and inviting in a way that sent a shiver down my spine, revealing a kitchen bathed in the golden hue of late afternoon light filtering through smudged windows. A manila envelope rested on the table, my name, Jaketores, scrawled in careful block letters, the precision of the handwriting suggesting a hand unaccustomed to haste or error. Inside, a thick roll of $100 bills promised salvation, their crisp edges a tangible weight in my palm, alongside a single sheet of paper titled Caretaker Instructions. The text was stark, its tone clinical and unyielding. Welcome to the Morales property. Your duties are simple. Maintain the house for 7 days. Payment is enclosed. Additional rules below. What followed was a list that chilled me more than the desert night ever could. Each line a cryptic command that seemed to hum with an unspoken threat. Failure to follow these rules will result in immediate termination of employment. I read it twice, a nervous laugh bubbling up from my throat, the sound reverberating strangely in the empty kitchen, as if the walls themselves absorbed and distorted it. On the counter, a bowl of sugar cubes sat, an oddity for an unoccupied house, their white surfaces gleaming under the light, beside a rotary phone with a sticky note attached. No calls after midnight. I smirked, attributing it to the eccentricities of the wealthy, a quirk I'd encountered before while house-sitting, watering wilting plants, feeding aloof cats, feigning interest in antique furniture that gathered dust in cavernous rooms. This couldn't be much different, I told myself, a mantra to steady my nerves. Then I saw the dolls. They lined every wall of the living room, perched on narrow shelves like a porcelain army awaiting orders. Dozens, perhaps more, each facing the wall, their backs to the room, tiny hands pressed against the adobe as if trying to push through to some other realm. I counted them without meaning to, the number rising to 87, a tally that felt significant, as if each figure held a story etched in its silent form. The silence pressed closer, a weight that tightened around my throat, the air thick with an unseen presence. Victorian children in lace and velvet, their glass eyes hidden, their painted smiles turned away. They seemed to wait, their stillness a facade that masked something alive beneath the surface. I approached the nearest shelf, my footsteps muffled by the thick air, the floorboards creaking faintly under my weight. The first doll, perhaps 18 inches tall, wore a blue sailor suit, its fabric faded but intact, her blonde hair real, human hair, yellowed with age and brittle to the touch. When I reached to turn her east, her head lolled backward with a soft click, revealing glass eyes with tiny pupils that tracked my movement, their gaze unervingly lifelike. For a heartbeat, I swore she blinked, a flicker so subtle it might have been a trick of the light, but it sent a jolt through me. I jerked my hand back, the doll's head rolling forward, hair falling across her face like a veil. "Just old?" I muttered, "just old and broken." But my hands trembled as I adjusted her, the porcelain cool and unyielding under my fingers. I worked my way around the room, each doll a study in eerie detail. Some were heavier than expected, their porcelain bodies solid and cold, as if filled with something denser than air, others hollow, their limbs loose and rattling faintly when moved. A few bore cracks like spiderwebs, their surfaces splintered with age, one missing an eye entirely, the empty socket a dark void that seemed to draw the light. The last, on the kitchen windowsill, was smaller, a foot tall, with dark hair cascading over a red dress that clung to her form. When I reached for her, she was warm, body warm, not the residual heat of the sun, and I pulled back, heart hammering against my ribs. I forced myself to touch her again, finding cold porcelain, nothing more, and chalked it up to imagination, a trick of the desert heat that played havoc with my senses. I turned her east and stepped back, checking the time. 5:47 p.m., 13 minutes to spare before the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky outside transformed, painted the color of rust, a fiery hue that cast long shadows across the room. I made a sandwich from the supplies I'd brought, bread, peanut butter, a bruised apple, eating at the kitchen table, my eyes drawn to the dolls. They didn't move, of course they didn't, but the silence felt different now, expectant, as if the house itself anticipated my next move, its walls humming with a subtle vibration I couldn't place. I found the security monitor in a closet, its screen divided into 6 feeds from cameras positioned around the property. Most showed empty desert, the moonlight casting long, skeletal shadows across the sand, but one focused on the living room, capturing me at the table, the doll's backs a silent wall behind me, their stillness a stark contrast to the unease growing within. At 9 p.m., I tried calling my sister in Tucson, the phone's silence a confirmation of my isolation. No signal, no lifeline. The landline was dead too, its cord chewed through by some desert creature, the frayed ends a testament to the wildness beyond the walls. I was truly alone out here, the realization sinking in as I settled with a paperback thriller, its pages blurring together, my mind drifting to the dolls. Every few minutes, I glanced at them, half expecting to catch one moving, their porcelain forms frozen yet somehow watchful. They never did. At 11:30 p.m., exhaustion won, and I went to bed, the bedroom a sparse refuge. A narrow bed with a threadbare blanket, a dresser scarred with time, a window framing the endless desert where stars pierced the night like unblinking eyes. I lay down fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, the house settling around me with small creaks and sighs that echoed like whispers. A coyote howled in the distance, its cry a lonely thread in the darkness, and I must have dozed, for I woke to my phone buzzing at 3:17 a.m. The 7th rule, check security cameras daily at 3:17 a.m., ringing in my mind like a bell tolling doom. I stumbled to the closet, switching on the monitor with trembling fingers, the cold screen casting a pale glow across my face. 5 feeds showed empty desert, the moonlight painting the sand in silver and shadow, a landscape untouched by human hands. The 6th feed showed the living room, and my breath caught. The dolls had moved. Not all of them, perhaps a dozen. Turning to face the room's center, their glass eyes reflecting the camera's infrared light like tiny, malevolent stars. As I watched, another doll rotated her head with mechanical precision, her movements slow and deliberate, staring directly at the camera, directly at me, her gaze piercing the screen as if she could see into my soul. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes with the heels of my hands, and when I looked again, they were back in position, facing the walls, all except one. A small figure in a yellow dress sat on the kitchen table, her hands folded in her lap, her posture serene yet unnerving. The second rule flared in my mind. If dolls gather at the table, leave 3 sugar cubes and exit backwards. My hands trembled as I fumbled for the sugar cubes in the cabinet, their white surfaces stark against the table's worn wood, and placed 3 squares before the doll. Her painted eyes seemed too alive, their depths holding a glint that suggested awareness, and I backed out of the kitchen, never turning, my spine rigid with tension until I reached the bedroom and locked the door. The house felt charged, the air thick with a static hum, like the prelude to a thunderstorm, and I didn't sleep, my ears straining for sounds that never came. Dawn crept in slowly, the desert sky shifting from black to purple to gold, and I crept back to the living room, half afraid of what I'd find. The dolls were on their shelves, facing east, the sugar cubes gone, the yellow-dressed doll in her spot as if she'd never moved. On the kitchen counter, a tarnished silver bracelet with a horse charm lay warm to the touch, identical to Maria's, a relic that defied logic and flooded me with memories of her disappearance. Day 2 dawned with a jolt, 3 drops of blood on my pillow, dark and dry, a macabre greeting from the night. My nose wasn't bleeding, my mouth tasting of copper and a sweet, burnt tang that lingered like a phantom flavor. I touched my lips, fingers coming away clean, the dolls watching from their shelves as I stripped the pillowcase and threw it in the trash. Their attention a palpable force, hungrier than before. The bracelet, fragile in the daylight filtering through the windows, bore a worn spot on the charm from Maria's thumb, a detail I traced with my own fingers as a child. The security footage from 3:17 a.m. showed no movement, the doll static despite my vivid memory, the timestamp mocking my sanity, the camera lying or my mind fracturing under the strain. I explored the property, the house nestled in a natural depression surrounded by low hills cloaked in cholla and prickly pear, their spines glinting like tiny daggers. An old mining road wound east toward distant mountains, its path overgrown yet traceable, a faint echo rising from below like a child's cry swallowed by stone. Behind the house, the root cellar's wooden door crumbled at my touch, its gray surface weathered by decades, revealing stone steps descending into a darkness that pulsed with an organic breath. The air rushed out, thick with the smell of earth, old wood, and something else, something organic, rancid, that turned my stomach. The third rule, if asked, "Where's my friend?" Swing the doll in the root cellar until dawn, loomed as I heard a whisper, my name on a child's voice, faint yet unmistakable. I slammed the door, heart pounding, the sound echoing in the still air. At 4 p.m., I began the daily ritual of turning the dolls east, the red-dressed one warm again, her heat unnatural against the shadowed wall. A crack in her cheek gleamed with what looked like dried blood, a detail that made my blood run cold. The house felt heavier, its walls seeming to lean inward, waiting for something to break. That night, scratching came from the walls, a faint sound like fingernails on wood, moving slowly from room to room, pausing outside my bedroom door with a presence I could feel. At 3:17 a.m., the monitor revealed the dolls in a circle, singing silently, the red-dressed one on my floor. "Where's my friend?" she asked, her voice clear, ancient, layered with something old and hungry. I whispered I didn't know. She tilted her head, frost forming on the windows despite the desert heat. She spoke of a girl with dark hair, a bracelet, Maria, her words a knife twisting in my gut. Day 4, the car wouldn't start. Its cables chewed with surgical precision, a trap tightening around me. I carried the red-dressed doll to the root cellar, descending stone steps slick with dampness. The chamber below carved with ancient symbols that hurt to look at. A well dominated the center, its depths exhaling decay. "And she's down there," the doll said, Maria's voice echoing faintly. I found the mine entrance, memories of the failed search flooding back, dread outweighing hope. That night, the dolls surrounded my bed, their cold bodies atide, demanding I choose, bring Maria or join her. "Someone has to pay the debt," they whispered, their voices a chorus of lost souls. Day 5, a monsoon trapped me, the dolls circling the well, Maria's voice calling from the depths. I descended, finding her skeleton, a false Maria revealing the land's hunger, my body transforming, porcelain overtaking flesh. I climbed out, vowing escape, the rain a relentless drumbeat overhead. Days 6 and 7 I fought the change, overloading the solar system to disrupt the dolls, escaping as the transformation reversed. Guilt lingered as others took my place, but I lived, free, human. The cycle continued, yet my defiance offered a fragile hope. Could you face such a night, reader? Would you resist the land's call or succumb to its embrace?